Okay.
Thank you. All right. So, most of you know me. My name is John Cerullo. I've done some teaching at DNKL in the winter sessions and some other support activities for Geshe Darge in classes that he teaches. And I'm very grateful to be here with you today. As I mentioned, I was going to be there this morning in person, but couldn't make it because of the recent concussion that I had suffered. But I'm ready, willing, and capable of doing this session this morning, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm going to share the screen, my screen, and so that you don't have to just be looking at me most of the time. Just give me a second. Can you turn on the share screen request? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Let me just bring that up. So what I'm putting on the screen right at the moment is simply a copy of the um, descriptive copy for today's session that is on the DNKL calendar. And these sessions that Geshe Darge hosts, and you've had uh, some other teachers who have been giving you wonderful presentations while Geshe Darge is away um, around this theme of inner peace for everyday challenges. I thought with this one class that I'm doing in this slot here on Sunday morning is to talk a little bit more about understanding these three principles that anchor these um, teachings that are normally presented. And I put them on the screen, I've highlighted them and labeled them and by number. With these kinds of presentations that are done here at DNKL on Sunday mornings, we're focused on the tools and techniques that Buddhism offers us that to work specifically with the mind, specifically the psychology of the mind, which relates to the second point, which is understanding mental states and emotions. And then number three, how to actively, once we sort of understand the psychology of the mind from a Buddhist point of view, and understand like mental states and emotions and how to look at them, identify them and look at them, how to actively reduce the negative ones that prevent us from having any kind of inner peace, which is the overall pervasive theme of these sessions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about today about the mind itself. All of us should understand, like when we talk about the mind and the fact that we're working with the mind in the tools and techniques that are offered to us through Buddhist practices, we should know that the principal um, thing that we're working with is our minds. So we should know what our minds are. So many of you might be meditation practitioners, um, and some of you might already be very much familiar with the mind in meditation. But I'm going to put it into focus here and try to oh, there is a screen being shared. Can everybody see it or not? Somebody on chat just said they can't see the screen that I put up from my computer. Can everybody see what I have on my screen? No. Wes is chiming in and saying he can't see the screen. So is that something that can be addressed, Chappelle, if you're still there? No, yes. Can you folks at DNKL see me? So apparently people on Zoom can't see my screen, Chappelle.
We can see you, John. I just had it muted while I was filling up some water for something else, so I'll just leave it unmuted for now. So everybody can see it.
The
Oh,
people
okay.
on Zoom
Some
can't see
people
it.
people on Zoom can't see.
Yeah,
It's-
that's what they're saying.
Super weird. I don't know.
We
Hmm.
can see John, but we can't see his screen. I think he's
Are
trying
you
Uh,
to share his
sure that
screen.
like, is that for everybody here? Because I just want to make sure it's not like your settings.
Online, we can see John, but we can't see the shared screen. That's right.
hmm.
It doesn't even show that there is a screen being shared.
Okay.
Is he supposed to be set as co-host or something like that?
I am, I believe.
Okay. All right. Yeah, can you stop sharing your screen? Uh,
Yeah, I'm hoping people can see the screen.
I haven't encountered this problem before, so I don't really know what to do.
Hmm.
I'll say you as co-host, Sean. I don't know if that's going to make a difference.
Okay, let's see. All
Maybe
right.
because it's the focus mode. That might have been
It
one.
says that participants can see the screen now. Okay,
I'm just
let
going to
me
stop focus mode. Try it again.
yeah, focus mode is ending, it says. So that's good because then that was the problem, I believe. Let's try this again.
Sorry about that.
No, no, that's okay.
We
People,
got it.
yeah?
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out. So, as I had started saying, basically, I shared in the opening there just on the screen a quick snapshot of the description for this course today, um, which is trying to stay anchored in the theme of these Sunday morning presentations. And as I said, there's three components that are mentioned that here we're in these sessions, we're working with what's called the psychology of the mind, and then understanding from that mental states and emotions. And then most importantly, how to actively reduce them, meaning negative emotions, and prevent us from experiencing inner peace and happiness. So I'm going to focus on in this one session that I have with us this morning, because I'm a substitute, if you will, for Geshe Darge. And you've had wonderful presenters previously presenting incredible information and meditation practices. But I'm going to start by focusing in on like what actually is the mind. If the mind is what we're working with primarily, even for people who are experienced meditators, it doesn't hurt for those of you who might be here today who fit that description to take time out and focus on like what actually is the mind. And then also to look at it from the point of view of even as I've highlighted here, a little farther down, so-called scientifically proven methods. So I'm going to start. That's sort of the course level of when we talk about the mind, meaning neuro science, neurophysiology. So I'm going to start with that, which is something probably that hasn't been discussed in many of these sessions, if at all. So here on the screen, I mentioned that Buddhist meditation affects brain activity by strengthening what's called attention networks, modulating the default mode network, DMN, and inducing changes in brainwave patterns, particularly gamma waves. So, most important to understand here as I start to talk about that, this is based on these findings are neuroscience-based findings done over well over 25 years of pretty high-end interaction between meditators, both novice and advanced meditators, um, kind of at the urging initially, sort of the spark that started this exploration of where does neuroscience interact with or intersect with, or can it provide information about scientifically about the brain through the experience of meditation. What happens? What changes are present? What seems to be going on? His Holiness the Dalai Lama, back in the 90s, encouraged scientists to do this. So these findings that I'm going to quickly go through will show you the results of this kind of uh, scientific exploration by neuroscientists, done mostly at the University of Wisconsin over um, decades, in Madison, also at Emory University in Atlanta. But since then, many, many other places around the world. So as I talk about this, this is what the context of where does this information come from? So I'll continue and say that um, novice meditators, so beginners like some of us might be, show increased activity in areas like the prefrontal cortex, while experienced practitioners demonstrate a decrease activity and greater efficiency in some regions of the brain, reflecting improved self-regulation and less default state mind. So as I talk further in this session, that might become clear, but keep that statement in mind. I think it will become clear because controlling the mind or self-regulating, being kind of in control rather than having your mind control you moment by moment is one of the benefits that occur in meditation practices. So that's why I have that highlighted. So effects of specific brain regions and networks. We're talking about neural networks. So prefrontal cortex. Novices show increased activities during meditation, suggesting it's a demanding attentional task. And it is. And I'm going to underscore that as I go into talking further about how meditation, as it's part of what we have in our Buddhist methodology, is so important. But that it is demanding. It isn't instant gratification. We'll get back to that. But experienced meditators often show less activity here, which indicates greater efficiency and a more relaxed state. So this is scientific data. Default mode networks, I mentioned them earlier. So here, this is networks in the brain that are associated with what's called mind wandering. Like in Buddhism, we talk about this being like what arises moment by moment that we're not even aware of. Um, in meditation, we talk about that being learning how to be mindful. We've all heard about mindfulness meditation and also awareness. Those are two sides of the same coin, if you will. So long-term meditators show decreased activity in this way, which suggests that they're better able to disengage from these thought patterns and self-regulate their attention more efficiently. So this is really, again, sort of underscoring what I've already mentioned. Attention networks, meditation practice strengthens neural networks involved in monitoring and engaging activity. This goes right to the concept of mindfulness and awareness. So scientifically, this is sort of supporting, not sort of, it's directly supporting that. So something that I've highlighted again. And then anterior cingulate cortex. This area involves self-control and attention, shows increased activity during meditation. So this is all part of like what we want to get after. When we talk about developing inner peace, then working with the mind and using the brain as a vehicle. Again, remember here, I'm starting my talk by talking about the most coarse level of what we have available to us as a human. And that's working with our mind, but the vehicle for that does involve the brain, not exclusively. We'll get into that. But here I'm talking about the coarsest level of what can be actually scientifically documented, which backs up what we normally talk about when we talk directly about the mind and consciousness and the changes that are possible. So next we talk about brain waves. Above, I just talked about the brain's networks. Here we're talking about waves. These are gamma waves, theta waves, neural synchrony. Sorry, I'm not good at saying some of these words. So gamma waves, when we talk about long-term meditation practitioners, they can produce what are called high amplitude gamma waves during meditation. And gamma waves are linked to high-level cognitive functions like compassion, happiness, and efficient information processing. Theta waves, increased frontal midline theta activity, has been observed during meditation, which is linked to maintaining attention and a state of heightened mindfulness. So, in a few moments, I'll be talking about one of the two main aspects of what we develop in meditation practice, which is single pointed concentration. That's what this is documenting scientifically here. And then when we talk about neural synchrony, sorry, meditation can lead to increased neural synchrony when different brain regions fire in a more coordinated way. So the science says that this may be a mechanism by which meditation induces both short-term and long-term actual brain changes. They've been documented over many years, number of decades, where they've been able to monitor the same meditators and see actual changes in the brain physically. So here we talk about long-term versus short-term effects. Novices typically show increased activation in regions like the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in tasks like planning and controlling, indicating that meditation is effortful for the untrained mind, meaning you have to make an effort. It's like I like to say, some of you have heard me say this before if you've attended any of my classes, that when you start to work with Buddhist Lojong mind training practices, especially in meditation, it's like going to the gym and you're completely out of shape and you have to make a major effort to get into shape. And so this is underscores also how doing meditation as part of a regimen of Buddhist methodology and process is it is not something that is instant gratification. And you have to just face that. Anything, though, anything in life, including like just physically getting in shape, takes a major effort. Experienced practitioners over time, the brain adapts. Experienced meditators may show more efficient brain activity, requiring less energy and exhibiting different brain wave patterns, including higher gamma activity and lower DMN activity, which I mentioned what those are earlier. So this suggests that meditation training leads to structural and functional changes in the brain that improve efficiency and self-regulation. And this whole concept of changing functionality and structure of the brain is called neuroplasticity. It's actually part of a subscience of neuro science overall that these meditation training practices have shown to have occur. So I'm going to circulate this document on the share, on the chat, whatever it's called. I'll do that before we end the session. Here I'm just giving you some more resources that have to do with this focus on the mind and meditation that have to do looking at it through the lens of science. So there's a short video here, and then these for people who are more interested in delving into this aspect of it. It talks about some of these studies in much more detail. Richard Davidson's famous, if you're familiar with these studies I mentioned earlier from the University of Wisconsin. So there's a whole, these are much more detailed reports. And these are all considered by mainstream science to be legitimate. They're not out there like on the edges of scientific endeavor. This particular link is located at the NIH website, which gives some validation, and even in the broader world that I mentioned earlier, Chinese researchers have put together this particular report. It's very, very, very informative. And for those of you who feel comfortable with science and empirical data, then this might help reinforce your confidence and faith in what meditation can do. And when we talk about applying it to developing inner peace. So then there's a few more of these. I put 4 or 5 of these. And at the very end, there's actually a documentary uh, on mindfulness meditation itself. It's very good. Also, I believe in that one there, Dr. Davidson is present in that one. So, but these are all things that go into much more detail, meaning video. When I say things, video presentations, but I'm including them in this document so that you'll have them available to you if you want to explore them further. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the mind itself. Um, when we talk about the mind itself, again, that's part of like what, from a Buddhist point of view, when we talk about developing inner peace for everyday challenges, we have to face and look at like what, that we're working with the mind and what is the mind. So we just talked about the brain, but the brain is not the mind. Mind um, or consciousness is really at the heart of Buddhist practice and theory itself. And it's said, looking at the mind through the Buddhist lens, that all happiness, um, ordinary or sublime, um, is achieved by understanding and transforming your own mind. That's a pretty, it's a pretty big statement. Um, so it's saying, come on in, explore the tools and techniques and processes that are available to us in the Buddhist methodology. And this is what's possible. That's pretty big. But we further talk about the mind beyond being like consciousness. Um, it's a non-physical energy, and its function is to know, K-N-O-W, to experience. It is, from a Buddhist point of view, awareness itself. Every single moment that you are experiencing right now is only possible through the awareness that's arising moment by moment in your mind. Um, so when we go a little deeper though and talk about what the mind is, we want to know like what its nature is. In Buddhism, we like to talk about nature of something. So the mind's nature is described from a Buddhist point of view as being clear. It's clear. Um, and it reflects everything that it experiences, again, moment by moment. So this is not unlike a, a pristine, clear lake on a cloudless filled sky day where, because there's no ripples occurring in the lake, everything surrounding the lake is perfectly reflected in the lake. That hints at like um, what the mind's nature is. It's pure and clear. So it's like that when we try to, put it into some kind of like understanding of what the mind really is. With that said, the mind changes moment by moment. It's beginningless. In Buddhism, we talk about each one of the minds that we are, that we possess, if you will. You, me, everyone we might know, all sentient beings for that matter, have a mind that changes moment by moment since beginningless time. It's a continuum. A previous moment of time comes from a previous moment of time in our mind stream. It's like a river that just has ever flowing capacity, going backwards into coming forward into the present moment and going forward into future moments. It's as simple as that. One gives rise to another moment of mind from a previous moment of mind, and that gives rise to a future moment of mind. So in general, we think of this as Westerners in general as being, if we give it a name, the totality of our consciousness and unconscious experiences. Our conscious and unconscious experiences, our mind, that movement, moment by moment, changes. Never, it's impermanent. It never, there's no fixed mind that we can identify. That's impossible, which is another topic. But here we're just trying to get a feeling for like what is really the mind. So each of us has in us, uh, we're with this mind, we're the center of a world of thoughts, um, perceptions, feelings, memories, and dreams. All of that is mind. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I think I did, the mind's not physical. It's this kind of non-physical energy, and that it has thoughts and feelings. It's a physical thing that has thoughts and feelings, and it is those very experiences. So when we have thoughts and feelings, that is mind. So this is something to sort of, for this hour or so that we're talking, just allow yourself to look at. We don't normally look at ourselves this way. Um, and it's different, obviously, from our body. It's also but it does have a connection. There's an interconnectedness, an interdependence. From a Buddhist point of view, there's an interdependence between the body and mind. And that this mind, consciousness, is carried through our body by subtle physical energies, which also control our movements, vital functions. And this kind of explains why physical sickness and discomfort can affect our state of mind, and why, in turn, our mental attitudes can both give rise to and actually heal physical problems. So, in conclusion, when we talk about just trying to get a feel for like what the mind is when we're working with this psychology of the mind in Buddhism and trying to create inner peace for everyday challenges, um, the mind can be compared to like an ocean. Momentary mental events such as happiness, irritation, fantasies, boredom, they're like waves arising on the surface of the ocean and then falling. Just like a wave rises, it falls. So that each one of those experiences I just mentioned, I can mention hundreds of them, um, are simply that kind of arising and falling experientially. But that underneath that, again, staying with the analogy of the ocean, there's a stillness to the ocean. When we go into the ocean's depths, um, and it's possible when we equate that to the mind through meditation that we can calm those turbulent emotions that we feel because we spend most of our time on the surface level of our ocean, our mind, experiencing the rising and the falling constantly of emotional content. Then it's possible through meditation to reach the depths of our mind, that clear, calm, pristine, clear state that is absent those experiences. And it's there that one can do the work of meditation, really solid meditation that has the ability to transform what we do. So here, I'll switch gears and start talking about like what is meditation, which starts to talk about how this number three, how to actively reduce negative uh, emotions and mental states. So in these sessions that most of you have been attending on Sunday that are labeled this title, Inner Peace for Everyday Challenges, you've experienced some of the three aspects of the Buddhist process, which is you come to these classes, you listen to specific readings, specific texts, you listen to explanations of them by a learned teacher, um, and you discuss and question and examine, essentially, looking at what it is that is the object, the focus of whatever the theme is for that particular gathering. And the intent of that is that you're not supposed to go home and like forget it for a week and then come back the next Sunday and listen to the next presentation. That's not bad if you do that. But the intent is that you go home and that you find a way to think about, contemplate, reflect on, and ideally carefully analyze the information you received. And then finally, where the actual transformation, where you could actually experience inner peace from your everyday challenges, for your everyday challenges, um, is through doing meditation practice. So those are the three stages of process that we use every day in Buddhist practice. Listening slash reading, reflecting, contemplating, analyzing, and then doing meditation. Without the third, there's not going to be any transformation. It's just not going to happen. And that's the point that I really want to focus on in this next segment. Because having understood a little bit from what I presented so far, scientifically, what happens on the coarsest level of this tool that we can use, the physical tool of our brain and our body, when we explore a little bit more like, well, what is the mind that is utilizing the brain, this consciousness and the mental events that are occurring, and how there's this an interconnectedness with our entire body. We then talk about, well, how could we work with that? How could we work with the brain, with the mind, with the body to look at what we're learning in these Sunday sessions on developing inner peace. And of course, you're all blessed to have these presentations that Geshe Darge and his associates have been doing and will continue to do. But that's only step one. Step two is that reflection, contemplation, analysis. And then step three really is learning specific meditation practices that get at the heart of what's been presented, what you've hopefully contemplated and analyzed, and then bring into the meditative experience. So even for those of you who are experienced meditators, and I know that some of these sessions have had some wonderful meditation presented. So you're all familiar with the meditation. And also Chappelle does the Wednesday evening meditation sessions at DNKL. So many of you might be familiar with meditation practices, but I want to put meditation practice just into focus in the context of these three steps of the Buddhist process of listening, reading, learning, contemplating, reflecting, and then meditating, and how they all go together. So again, when we talk about the mind, we can divide it into what are called sense consciousnesses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, most importantly, mental consciousness. So mental consciousness ranges from our gross level conscious experiences like anger and desire to our most subtle level of complete stillness and clarity. Remember the ocean analogy that I just gave us. It's accurate. Or even the lake that has no ripples in it analogy. This is what we would say is symbolic of our more subtle levels of mind. Grossest level of mind are the mental afflictive states of the kinds of things like anger and desire, which are two of the three, what are called the three poisons in Buddhism. So, very fundamental to causing a lot of the problems that prevent us from having inner peace. So, meditation is an activity of mental consciousness, what we just defined as one of the sense consciousnesses. Um, and meditation can take many forms. Today, I'm going to identify two main types of meditation. One is single pointed concentration or shamatha, and the other is analytical meditation, and how to skillfully use them together, again, in the context of this three-step process that we are talking about right here. Um, the ultimate aim of Buddhist meditation, I just want to say it for the record, is to awaken the very subtle level of consciousness and to use that to discover reality itself directly and intuitively. That doesn't have to be your goal, especially when we talk about meeting everyday challenges. There's a more immediate need that we're putting as the object of our focus in our mind when we talk about that. But one doesn't negate the other. They're not mutually exclusive. One could pursue one and have the other be a benefit that is experienced as a result. And that's why Buddhist meditation practice in this context of the three stages of learning to look at the psychology of the mind, mental afflictive states, identifying negative emotional states, starting with the Buddha's Four Noble Truths and proceeding from there. Many of the things you've already discovered in the writings and that you've analyzed in these Sunday morning classes with Geshe Darge. It's then taking those into constructive meditation practice. So in 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 meditation, there's many different types of techniques. Um, And so here, I'm just going to start by talking about what meditation is not, if you will, because a lot of people misunderstand what meditation really is. Um, it's not, first thing to say, it's not simply a matter of sitting in a particular posture and working with your breath. You can do that. That's a way of doing a certain kind of meditation practice, very much helpful in the beginning stages of a meditation session of any kind, but especially for beginners. But that isn't like what one should make as one's goal in meditation. Meditation is reaching a certain controlled state of mind. And that harkens back to those comments that I showed you um, about even neuroscience being able to identify what experienced meditation practitioners are able to experience, that efficiency of working with the mind, even showing up in the coarse manifestation level of the brain. So, and also, when we talk about sitting, experienced meditator can do meditation at any time. And this is really great because if you really work at meditating, you can learn how to bring meditation off the cushion and use it all day long, 24/7. And I mean that. I'm speaking from experience, that's something that it can be available to you all the time. You could be doing it while you um, working, walking, um, on your commuting to work, cooking dinner. Um, there's a wonderful episode of, I think it's on Netflix. If some of you might have seen it, or if you haven't, I definitely say check it out. There's a show called Chef's Table. And in season 3, episode 1, if you haven't seen it, they document, and it's beautifully filmed, a Korean Buddhist nun who identifies herself as a cook, not a chef, a cook. But she's revered by master chefs around the world as being almost untouchable in terms of being a master chef. And it's because the state of her mind um, is in a deep meditative place of pure, calm clarity, knowing as she's doing this activity. She's a great example, one of the ultimate examples of somebody doing a physical activity that is a very deep meditative practice. So I highly encourage you to use that one as an example. Check it out. It's also inspiring to see this nun. Um, and it's also related through some stories in Tibetan Buddhism that um, there's a story of one Tibetan meditator realized emptiness, which is a high level of attainment in Buddhism, um, realized emptiness while chopping wood. And another attained single pointed concentration while cleaning his teacher's gompa or room. So, you can do meditation practices at all times. So it's not something you should feel anchored to, where you got to go sit in a quiet place and be in a meditative posture focused on your breath. It's a good place to start, but know that it's something that can become a incredible tool that you can use throughout your day. Um, Also, it's not something where you're just tuning out, where you just sit and tune out. And actually, Buddhist meditation, especially built on the on readings and presentations and listening lectures that you do on these Sunday mornings and analyzing them, you're tuning in. You're tuning in a much more detailed way that's much more detailed than is possible just by listening or reflecting. You're digging in on the ultimate level, trying to see that object, the lesson of that teaching in real focus. So it's really taking a good, hard look at the object of meditation. And we always talk in meditative terms when we say object of meditation. It doesn't have to be a statue of the Buddha. It could be the lesson of a teaching. So that next week or next month or next year, when you recall that, it has become experiential. It becomes part of what's present in your mind stream. Most of us know from like going to school. I know that like when I went to college, almost everything I learned, course by course, semester by semester, you studied and then you took the course, you passed the course. But if you ask me about the content of that course, I probably won't remember it. But if you internalize it experientially, which is what's available to you as a potentially deep meditative practitioner who can actually reduce negative mental states by using meditation practices, this is what it means to have meditation. Take what you learn and become something you experience. Then it's something you don't lose. It becomes part of what is experienced. It becomes what is experienced in your mind stream. So we work in Buddhism. I'll change the graphic here. Primarily, when we start learning about what's the source of our mental afflictions or negative states of mind that prevent inner peace in everyday life, it's being attached to and having aversion to other things. So it's desire and anger or hatred and attachment, seen what we call ignorantly meaning mistakenly, thinking that that has some sway over us, but it doesn't have to. It's just habitual that we experience things that way. So in through going to teachings like you have been doing on these Sunday mornings, and then reflecting on them and being able to take them as objects into meditation, you can transform, learn how to let go of attachment and aversion and transform your ignorance into experiencing these things in the way they really are. That's the most preliminary way of addressing the root of what we're working with in meditation when we look at what are we trying to transform in our mind. Then, more specifically, what we're trying to transform in our mind are what we identify in Buddhism as the 10 non-virtuous activities of body, speech, and mind. And that's what I put up on the screen here. So these negative aspects, these are considered negative, manifested negative aspects in our minds. We call them mental afflictions, delusions. They're delusions because they're based on ignorantly experiencing things in the way that I showed on the previous slide. And then that manifests as jealousy, anger, desire, pride, and go on and on and on. And so these arise basically from misunderstanding our reality. And that gets into talking about karma, which we're not going to talk about today, but cause and effect, if you will. But the benefits of being able to identify how our minds actually work in not engaging with people and phenomena, objects that are present to us moment by moment by moment by moment. When we do it in this non-aware way, non-mindful way, where we don't have the wisdom of seeing the true way that they exist, then that leads us to self-grasping and aversion to other things. Self-grasping to some things, aversion to other things. And that leads us to then engage in the 10 non-virtuous activities, which we do constantly. We do constantly. And this is what we learn about fundamentally in Buddhism. So the results of doing meditation practice, where we can actually transform these negative aspects of the mind, not just learn about them, but transform them, happens in meditation. And the benefits can be immediate. And even though the goal of this kind of process of learning, reflecting, and meditating in Buddhism is to see the true nature of how things are and experience them directly, as I mentioned before, the short-term benefits, meaning in everyday life, are very much present to you because that's the way that you do this transformation. It's a slow process, slow and gradual, meaning using meditation to actually transform the mind. But when you can soften the mistaken way that we experience things through meditation, it creates a much more positive and realistic self-image of that you can then identify with, if you will. Um, you learn to have fewer unrealistic expectations of people and things around you. You have less disappointment. Relationships improve. Life becomes, there's less disappointment in life. Because everything becomes more stable and satisfying. And you can see how those kinds of pervasive benefits that arise out of doing a consistent meditation practice could lead you to um, having a more uh, enjoyable daily existence filled with happiness, peaceful states of mind, less anger, less anxiety, less depression, etc. So there are these immediate benefits. And that's why I wanted to focus on showing you the value of the third component of what happens in the Sunday morning classes of listening and learning, discussing, questioning, then taking that home and reflecting and analyzing on. But then if you really want to have that affected change in your life, you have to put it into practice through the third leg of the stool, if you will, called meditation. But it is something, if you're an experienced meditator, you already know this, but if you're sort of a beginner, um, it's a lifelong process. It isn't something that, you can listen to a lecture, you can read a profound text by a master that was already experienced and has seen the true nature of things and therefore can articulate where um, negative emotions come from, like anger and jealousy. But then to take that like knowledge that you hear and read about and listen to and have it change you. It's another matter. It's another matter. It does start with that, but it does take much more effort. And that's the meditation process. Um, so it's a slow and gradual process. Some of you already know that, but it again, it's not unlike going to the gym and working out. The first time you do it, it's going to be painful. You're even going to be sore and, might not feel good. But you have to learn how to stick with it, if you will. Um, so that's an overview of like what meditation is, especially in the context of the Buddhist process. So the next thing I want to talk about is the two types of meditation that we utilize in Buddhism. The next, so here, by the way, I talked about the three poisons and the resulting 10 non-virtuous what are called activities of body, speech, and mind. I'll come back and talk about the 10 virtuous activities that we try to replace these 10 non-virtuous activities within meditation. But the first type of meditation is called shamatha or stabilizing meditation. Some of you who might be familiar with the Lam Rim in Buddhism, uh, uh, the Lam Rim Chimo specifically, Jason Kappa calls it serenity. So this is a type of meditation that is also known in English as single-pointed concentration. So single-pointed concentration is, I'm just going to say it, like you can't avoid it. If you're good at it, great. If you're not, don't let it dissuade you from practicing meditation, but it's a prerequisite to being able to turn knowledge that you hear about and reflect upon and analyze into experience, meaning transforming your negative mental afflictive states into positive mental states moment by moment. It's essential. It's like the microscope that you put to work looking at the object of meditation with that deep, clarity and up closeness that a microscope can give you. Um, and you have to develop single pointed concentration where you might only be able to do it at the beginning for a few seconds, but you have to keep at it where as you're taking on an object of meditation, you can stay focused on it for longer and longer periods of time. And the more you can do that, we're not talking about external objects, we're talking about internal objects of meditation, ones that you bring into your mind stream. And you now kind of know what that means. Your mental experiences, moment by moment, you fill them with this object of meditation that has a positive quality. And when you're doing that single pointedly in meditation, while you're doing that, the presence of the negative or opposite, if you will, it's not present. And the more time you spend first in meditation on a cushion and then bringing that off the cushion into your moment by moment existence in daily life, where the absence of the non-virtuous activity, if you will, of body, speech, and mind are no longer present, that's the transformation occurring. You're replacing these 10 non-virtuous qualities with these 10 virtuous qualities because you're working in meditation mostly with the mind and then the body and the speech are those that you will work with mostly off the meditation cushion. So it does involve what I talked about earlier, getting to a point where you're really good at single pointed concentration, where you can be meditating like at any time. I do it all the time when I'm doing yard work. It's one of my favorite types of meditations. So this kind of meditation is fundamental. And if you think about it in life, you can't do anything well without having single pointed concentration. If you have scattered, uncontrolled mind, there's little chance of any kind of success in any endeavor, not just like, like trying to memorize a telephone number. Well, nowadays we could just put it in our smartphone, but I think you get the point. Um, so without concentration, certainly successful meditation is impossible. And that's why I said it's a prerequisite. It's a prerequisite to what? Whatever you're learning. Like, for example, again, in these Sunday morning sessions, and then bringing home and contemplating. taking them into meditation with single pointed concentration and then just abiding with it there is where it turns into an experience. And what do we mean by experience? We mean it then occupies your mind rather than something that you're trying to eliminate. And the genius of meditation is that you don't eliminate negative mental afflictive states of mind by pushing them out. You replace them with a more powerful mm, uh, uh, energy that has virtuous qualities to it, like these ones that I put, and that's why they're called virtues. So it's a technology meditation to do this most skillfully. Um, so I'm underscoring here how important developing single pointed concentration is, even if you're no good at it at the beginning. Um, a great place to start learning how to develop single pointed concentration is Chappelle's like Wednesday night meditation class, working with the breath. It's essential to do that kind of um, meditation practice. But it isn't enough. You have to combine that with what's called analytical meditation. So, analytical meditation is where you actually take and gain real insight into whatever the object of meditation is. And when we talk about object here, we're talking about, like, for example, like what Geshe Darge might present as the topic through the analysis of a set of verses any given Sunday. That becomes the object of meditation. It's very tangible. It's right there. Contemplate, take it home. What is it really saying? What did Geshe Darge really teach? What questions do I still have that I want to bring back next week to ask him about that? And it's gaining clarity on that level through first reflecting about it and then making that the object of your meditation. This is where you gain real insight. And that's actual analytical meditation. When you get to the point where the object is, you're so comfortable with it, like you understand it conceptually, and you feel so comfortable with it that at first, when you first heard about it, it was way over here compared to you being over here. It's like, whoa. But then the more you reflect about it and then make it an object of meditation, using as much single pointed concentration as you have, it comes closer and closer together with your mind. Eventually, they get so close that you're comfortable with it as an object of meditation. And once that occurs, you then drop the analytical aspect of looking at the object in meditation and you simply reside with it. You rest with it. You be with it. The end result, and that is actually bringing back into the picture of the meditative process, single pointed concentration. You just reside with it where you don't lose your clear, calm, like a still lake, like the deep ocean. There's no interference, no coming and going. You're just focused on the object. That's a space in meditation where you can become one. They talk about becoming one with the object. That's what happens. That's what happens at that point. That's why you need shamatha. That's why you need this ability to take and focus on an external object. Here we're talking about a teaching you received, and then focus on it as an internal object analytically, and then you focus on it with your mind. That means just simply residing with it. That's the final stage of shamatha or single pointed concentration. So this is like giving you, like, I'm the mechanic in the garage and I'm bringing you in and I'm showing you how I build this process called meditation and how you actually accomplish the goal. And here is how you take analytical meditation. You first stabilize your mind with the initial part of a meditative process, usually using breath meditation. And then you move to the object, analytically engaging with it, keeping focused on it. And again, over time, not necessarily in one session, you get closer and closer and closer to it. And then finally you'll know it, where you can just engage with it because you know it. You can, with your clear mind of knowing, that calm space of knowing place, not where there's lots of things going on like, oh, your mind jumping around. You could just be with it. And that's what real knowing is. That's where real transformation happens. That's where real dropping of mental afflictive states starts to happen. And so this is how you really need to learn how to do the meditative process. Um, and that's really what meditation is. There's all kinds of meditations that exist. Um, there's meditations that you can do that just help you identify and understand the mind itself, which I just talked about conceptually here a little bit. But there's a couple of meditations that we could do that are specifically about just being present to your mind, and then also um, there's meditations that are real analytical, where you learn how to do analytical processes. A lot of Lojong mind training meditations are like that. Meditation on seven-part cause and effect, meditation on exchanging self and others. There's so many of them, and they could all become part of your toolbox, your meditation toolbox. There's meditations where you do visualizations. They're very helpful in developing single pointed concentration too, that you just reside with the object of meditation, that it's a visual object, not a thought object or an analytical object like a teaching or a verse. They're both the same, but they can bring different benefits. Um, there's also meditations that you could do that are devotional in nature. All of these will quell the 10 non-virtuous qualities that generally are at least contaminating our experience. Even if we're happy and peaceful, that comes and goes. And the reason it comes and goes is because we allow these qualities to arise in our mind. And they're present because of cause and effect. Of things that we've engaged in previously that are now ripening. That gets into talking about karma, which we're not here to do. We're talking about meditation and what meditation actually is, and how it can be effective in transforming fundamentally the three poisons, which then manifest in the form of the 10 non-virtuous deeds of body, speech, and mind, and transforming them into the 10 virtuous qualities that could become present in our mind regularly. And the reason the transformation can fundamentally happen is because everything is impermanent. Remember, one of the qualities of the mind is that it changes moment by moment. So you can change what's present in your mind, like duh. But it is something you have to stop and think about. And then you need to engage in objects of meditation that are really virtuous, like the kinds of presentations that are done in the Sunday morning classes that are normally given. But then where you really want to do the work, if you're really interested in tackling the persistent presence of these kinds of non-virtuous qualities in your mind that manifest in what are called, in Buddhism, they're called the 84,000 mental afflictions. The Buddha identified 84,000 of them. Fundamentally, they're attachment and aversion, and then there's manifestations of those two into five and into 10 and exponentially up to 84,000. So you can work with identifying with these teachings that are presented and then use them as objects of meditation to bring into meditation. So at this point, I've talked long enough about presenting science of the course level of the tool we use, which is our brain, but also how that's interconnected with our body and our mind, and how the body is affected physically. The state of our body, the health of our body is affected by our mind because there's interconnectivity there. Then I talked about what is the mind. And then I talked about what is meditation and the two pillars that we need to incorporate into our meditative process. And some of this is familiar to all of you, but this is the point, is to put all this into focus as it relates to the Sunday morning teachings that, you know, you're lucky to have available to you. Fortunate, I should say, not lucky. I could go from here what one would normally do if I was a meditation teacher giving additional sessions. I would go in next into how to establish a meditative practice, a really good meditation practice. We don't have time for that today, and that's not the focus of today's talk. How to actually conduct the meditation session. So establishing a practice, conducting properly how to conduct a meditative session. And then I would also talk about common problems. The common problems in meditation are, lacticity, where you you have such a lull of energy that maybe you lose your focus, maybe even fall asleep while you're trying to meditate. Then the opposite of that is your mind being frenetic. So we're not going to do that. We could do a short meditation actually, but that is like just giving you a taste of the nature of the mind. It's one of those meditations that one you want to become intimately familiar with your mind, what you're working with. But before we do that, I'm going to stop sharing and just ask if anybody has any questions about what I presented, or if you have any questions about meditation as a component of what we're presenting in these Sunday morning sessions as part of the process of listening to presentations and teachings that are supposed to help you in your everyday life. And anything else maybe that you think I might give you some words of advice on. So any questions whatsoever?
Hi, John. Thank you so much for this teaching. This is wonderful. I guess my question is in terms of as someone who's never actually experienced a sort of like luminous clarity of the mind directly, it sort of confused me as to what exactly is what exactly that state is, or what exactly is occurring during that state. So I guess when in that sort of, state where the mental afflictions are subdued and you're resting in that sort of clarity of the mind, of the nature of mind, is it that there are a complete absence of any objects that could be perceived by the senses? Is it that you are free from the nominal labeled reality that you're imputing onto objects perceived by the senses? Or is it not even that and just a realization that your imputations on things are just imputations and that they still remain?
More the latter of but it starts with, for a beginner, we're talking about meditation, identifying on a course level. And usually in meditation, we use a visual analogy like a calm lake with no ripples or a cloudless sky with, just, bright openness of space. And that's establishing we're scratching the surface there. So this is step one of, oh, this is closer to the nature, the natural state of mind. It isn't all that noise going on. But then when one actually becomes advanced, one gets comfortable where you hold that baseline, that foundation, and one can then, from that point of view, use it's like you're using a part of your mind to look at another part of your mind because you're still living in the realm moment by moment of conceptualization. We're not beyond that. So we in the meditation practice of getting familiar with that state of mind, we establish it's still an analogous baseline. And then we try to experientially experience that, have a realization of that. But then having developed single pointed concentration, we actually look at any object that we want to look like. It might be a specific mental affliction that's manifesting in your mind. Like you might be somebody who has anxiety. And then you learn to see that object from that point of clarity where you don't grasp it. How grasp it? Grasp it where it has control over you, that it is you, that I am anxiety, meaning you let go of that. And in Buddhism, we let go of that by fundamentally through the teachings that are present to us, especially teachings on the true nature of objects, having no inherent self-existence, that it can't be you. You're not anxiety. You are that clear, calm, pristine, moment by moment reality. And that everything that arises, you can experience with bliss, even anxiety. And then you let go of it. Eventually, it disappears in the sense that it has, you have attachment to it in that mistaken way of labeling it as having some inherent self-existence. And so this is what it means to have something be absent. Absent is the key. It isn't that it doesn't exist. It's that it's absent in the sense that it doesn't have inherent self-existence. Therefore, it has no sway over you. It might still arise, but you learn how to identify it that way. So it's closer to the last way that you phrased it, Wes. So it isn't that you're going into a spaced out. Remember what I said, meditation isn't like where you reach that calm space of like, identifying the clear nature of the mind. Remember, the other aspect of the mind is knowing. Knowing means with wisdom. Knowing what? Knowing that all things that arise moment by moment do not inherently self-exist. They have no nature of themselves, in and of themselves, whether it's an emotion or it's an object. Why doesn't every sentient being or every human being experience chocolate the same way? I love chocolate. There's somebody sitting at DNKL right now who's saying, "Oh, I don't like chocolate at all." If it had inherent self-existence, everyone would experience it the same way. So it's actually the deeper aspects of mind meditation, understanding the nature of what's going through one's mind, that you first establish that space. But it isn't just residing in it. It's then engaging with everything that's arising moment by moment with wisdom. Wisdom of what? Understanding that none of these things inherently self-exist. Does that mean they don't exist? No. It means that it's your attachment to them, the mistaken attachment to it. Remember the image I brought up of the three poisons. So then this is where we have to avoid one of the four extremes of nihilism, that things don't exist. I mean, that's nonsense. But a lot of Buddhist schools would argue that the Prasangika, Mahayamika Prasangika, which is the view of lack of inherent existence that Galupa tradition Buddhists, like that's what we practice at DNKL, that's what they believe. This is not so. It's just mistakenly, it's all about eliminating self-grasping. I could have just said that. So I don't know if that helps. Wes, does that help, or do you want to further comment about that? Or
Yeah, that was a big help, and I guess in terms of like um and this might be going like a little beyond what we talked about in this class, but then it's talked about there's two types of meditative equipoise that you could dwell in. There's like the space like and the illusion like. What it kind of sounded like you were referring to is the illusion like equipoise. I'm wondering how that differs then from the space like, or if I'm mistaken, and that if you were referring to the space like, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's one way to work to identify that the way you did with equipoise and space-like, but it is the same thing. It's like the at this elementary sort of level, if you will, of what I discussed today. It does relate to what I discussed today. Then establishing, again, going back to the analogy of the ocean and learning how to abide in the depth of the ocean where it's always it's pure calm, space-like, has nothing arising, coming to existence and being present and then going out of existence. Then having then uh, conjoin that, if you will, with the arisings that do occur in our everyday life. Again, we're staying with the theme of like what arises in our everyday life and what does this have to, what's John talking about have to do with that? We learn how to properly um, experience every single moment mindfully with awareness of the arisings that occur, that they are not um, inherently self-existing and therefore they have no ultimate sway over me, and that you can learn to work with that. It doesn't happen instantly, but we can learn to work with that wisdom, and then that will that mistaken identity, that mistaken labeling will start to disappear. You'll still be left with the image, as they say in advanced meditations practitioners talk about still having the image of something being there in an inherent way, but we know that it isn't. Um, One can go beyond that to directly seeing the true nature of things in a non-manifested, non-elaborate form, where but that's like another topic. That's talking about seeing emptiness directly, which is a Buddhist concept that some people in this class may or may not be familiar with. Um, so it's kind of saying the same thing I was saying, um, just labeling it a little differently. But the way I presented it today is a little more fundamental, or and maybe a little bit more for beginners than it is in the way that you were, wording it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep. Okay. No, but this was great. Thank you very much.
good, good. So, anybody else have any questions or comments or concerns or like, what is he talking about or any of that kind of thing?
Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
So I just have a question about analytical meditation. So I think it's easy to, understand single pointed meditation because it's an object that you can kind of wrap your head around, but you can't always wrap your head around a teaching or a lesson. It's a lot, it's wordy, or, do you have any advice in terms of being able to sort of wrap your head around that so that you can meditate on it?
Yeah. Um, it's a process. And what I mean by that is that your meditation session would go something like this. You would start your meditation practice like you would, hopefully, with any meditation practice, where you first develop awareness of your body, use your breath to calm your body, use your breath to then further move inward, where you're just present to your breath, still connected to your body. And then as you are focused just on your breath for maybe 5 or 6 breaths coming in and out, you're watching your breath. Maybe you have a sentry posted at your nostrils where the breath is, you're just in and out, and you can maintain that single pointed focus. You then move your focus to an object. Now, so if let's say the object that I'm talking about, you can make a teaching an object. The wonderful thing about one of the wonderful things about verse, you might have noticed, some of you have been coming to these classes, that a lot of the teachings that are presented by masters is presented in verse form. Take any master. But if you tried to take a verse on emptiness by Nagarjuna, he can give you, and he does give you every single time. And I'm just using him as an example. In every single verse, it is power packed with tons of insight. So you would take like one line of one verse, or maybe you'd take two lines of a verse. And if you read any commentaries that typically go with verse presentation insight, like Nagarjuna, and the commentary is the analysis. And in one of these Sunday morning classes, that might equate to like Ishidargi going through a series of verses. Don't try to maybe take all the verses, just take two lines of one verse by whomever he's presenting. And then try to go home and not let go of. This is part of the second stage, reflecting about what you heard. Take notes. Thank goodness his teachings are recorded. Go back and listen to the recording. Get familiarity with it enough that when you do that meditation practice and you've used your single point of concentration to calm your mind, get it away from the moment by moment arisings that are occurring. And if something occurs that's distracting, you know how to look at it, let it go. We're not doing a meditation here, but that's what you would do. And then you bring it back to the breath. Then you bring, here's the analysis. You move your mind from your breath to focus as best you can on that object, that verse, the two lines of that verse, and what you learned about it from a commentary or from a teaching by Geshe Darge. You would have already looked over your notes. You would have already thought about what you experienced in person at that teaching. You would have already maybe listened to the recording a few times and gained, okay, you're still this far apart from it, but you can turn your attention to it and look at it. And as you look at it and just be with the verse, as focused as you can, you're not practicing shamatha at this point or single pointed concentration. You are using your conceptual mind to recall that meaning. You bring it closer to you. What does that mean? It means bringing it closer to you, maybe through a series of like just focusing in on that verse for five meditation sessions, 15-minute meditation sessions over the course of 5 days. And it gets a little closer to you. What it means is that you're more familiar with it. Each time you go back to turning your focus to it, it's like it's right there. You get to the point where it being right there, meaning, oh, I get this, meaning I'm down with this. Huh, I got it. I got it. Then you take that and bring it back into shamatha. Just be with that understanding, I got it moment, and stay with that as long as you can. And when you lose it, either end the meditation session with a dedication for the wonderful experience that you've been given and dedicate that to the benefit of all sentient beings in the future, or go back to the object. You can also use your breath. It could be tiring, that single point of concentration on that object. So go back to your breath, regroup, get your focus back, turn back to the object or not. Again, it's all about how long you can stay with the object and how well you stay with the object. If it's kind of poor, like you're not very good at it, and you can only do it for like, and I mean it, like for seconds, that's okay. You have to start somewhere. This isn't normal, meaning this isn't what we normally do. We're normally going, 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 sleeping, sleeping, sleeping. But this can be just like going to the gym, a process. So this is how you use an object like a teaching, and bring it into analytical, the analytical process. The analytical process starts before you get on the cushion, as I just described. Read the verse over, contemplate it. Don't discount the second step of the three-step process. You read something, and then you read an accompanying commentary. You listen to it, or you listen to it on a Sunday morning teaching, and then you listen to the teacher talk about what it means, and listen to the recordings. That middle step is called contemplation reflection, and it's called analysis. Then that, if you don't do that, then there's the bridge that you got to get. That's the bridge to get you across to meditation, taking that object into meditation. So it isn't, I'm going to say it, it isn't hard. It's just getting used to doing that kind of process. And it's simple, but it's an ingenious process, that the Buddhist process of listen, learn, read, contemplate, reflect, analyze, then bring into analytical meditation. Um, it's ingenious because the end goal is, once you are familiar with it and you're like, I got it, I'm comfortable with that statement about dependent arising that Jason Kappa talked about, or this teaching from Arya Deva that Geshe Darge presented, whatever it is, that you can then make it what it means to say become experiential, means it actually takes presence in your mind. Then you won't forget it because it's part of you. It's different than book learning. We don't learn that way when we go to a college course, or learn algebra or whatever it is. Um, so is that helpful in any way in terms of like what you were thinking about with your question?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Thank
Good,
you.
good, good, good. Because I want to make this like a technology, to use a modern world, that you can access. Don't think of meditation as some sort of Eastern activity that is like anchored like in Indian culture or Tibetan culture, whatever. It's something that's available to you. It's a technology, it's a process. And it's been used for 2,500 years in Buddhism, and through Lojong practices that are specifically created to work with the mind, and then other associated meditation practices. Like I said, some are about just the nature of the mind, some are about bringing up virtuous qualities like loving kindness meditation, compassion meditations, which compassion, two main meditations for compassion in our tradition are the seven step cause and effect meditation and the exchanging self and others. They're all part of what are called the Lam Rim meditations. Then there's all these meditations associated with this, with Master Shanti Deva's six perfections. There's such a toolbox of meditations that are specifically built to create the 10 the 10 virtuous deeds in your mind stream, and thereby sort of push out, dissolve, gently remove, where there's just not ever arising anymore, the non-virtuous deeds. And then peaceful states of mind, absence of anxiety, depression, etc. The things that we're after in these Sunday morning classes become manifest in your mind stream. And then you could start bringing them around with you all day long. And again, you could do meditations. You can learn, if you build your meditation toolbox with a bunch of different meditations, you can utilize them based on how you're feeling. There are meditations that deal with negative energies of depression, anxiety, and anger. And many more, but there's a set that are just for those. These are very practical. So I highly encourage us to move forward with, doing these, keeping this part of the three-step process in mind when we come to these sessions on Sunday. And then how do we really work with them? How do we really learn them, not in just our brain, but in our mind, and then really experientially in our mind stream, where it's just these qualities are just arising moment by moment instead of what we are habitually used to, frankly. So it's end of our session, but if anybody else has another question, I'll take it before we end. no more questions. And I want to thank Chappelle for coordinating the the DNKL, at DNKL, so people who came to the session could at least see what we presented and hear what I presented. And again, I apologize for not being there in person today, but doctor's orders kind of a thing. And I hope I get a chance to teach some more and offer some more that about meditation, especially. I'm sort of addicted to meditation. It's one of the things I self-grasp. So that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you, John.
Hopefully see you
Thank you,
soon.
John.
Thank you, John.